And welcome to Flightdeck Live. I am Tim Capper as the Alouettes. Wow. As the Alouettes come back to beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders by the score of 27-24, along with Cliffy D. How are you, buddy?
Oh, Tim, my word. You know what? The Saskatchewan Montreal games are always so much fun for so many reasons. Even just a few weeks ago at Percival Molson Stadium, that was a fun game. I mean, not if you're a Riders fan, maybe, but I mean, and this game was absolutely no different. I mean, talk about cinema. You talk about back and forth, a game that really could have gone either way, and these were two teams that were desperate for a win. Two teams that were desperate to one to keep the party going, and the other one to redeem themselves after losing or not losing, but having not won in their last three games. I mean, both these teams wanted the win bad enough, but hey, man, this Montreal team is truly something special.
Oh, it really is. So the Alouettes improved to 9-1 on the season, Cliff. They also set a new franchise record with their 8th straight road win. But man, this game, and it's something that we had a bunch of everything, obviously, and first let's comments here. Let's start with the comments real quickly first, and then we'll talk about the game itself. From Chris Bousquet, our friend over in Halifax, hate to say we got lucky tonight, but we kind of got lucky. Those 4 missed field goals were a huge difference, and we likely would have lost without those misses. But Alexander played a strong game. Also, comment too.
You know what, Chris? No disrespect, but if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. You know what I mean?
Okay. Defense was good too. Got to give Saskatchewan credit. They were very good. Kicking was the difference.
It really was. Special teams was prevalent throughout the entire game. I mean, my goodness. I mean, when it comes to Jose Maltos versus Brett Lothar, I mean, that could have been a real dogfight there. But I mean, Maltos was perfect on his field goal attempts, whereas Brett Lothar, oh boy, it was an adventure for him to say the least. Yeah, and so unbelievable, just the way just earlier in the game, missing a field goal, and you're like, oh, okay, that's not good, and then missing another one, like, oh, that's also not good. Like, it just,
Yeah.
wow, it was. Oh, I, I gotta say, a lot of people are already referencing the whole Paul McCallum thing. If I'm Brett Lothar's neighbors in Saskatchewan, I got to get security detail on my driveway because poop's gonna go down. It could very well go.
Yeah. It's again, it's funny. We've noticed this from a different. It's a different Davis Alexander from home to away, which we understand. It kind of makes sense. And obviously, this time around, you're playing in a ruckus. You're playing in a ruckus. At Mosaic Stadium. He's there with his, as they kept showing, his girlfriend and their families. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it seemed like Cole Speaker had, I think they never said officially they were, but you had some guys there supporting Cole Speaker too. But, Davis, considering, did not play very well in the first quarter, seemed to just wasn't able to get things going. And this was just a drag out game, very shades of the game in Montreal a few weeks ago, Cliff. The Owls did lead 10-7 at halftime.
They did, and it's funny. It kind of felt, it was starting to feel a little bit like the Saskatchewan Ottawa game as well, where it was just a very quiet, almost conservative first quarter, and I'm saying that gently as best as I can. But then towards the end of the game, things really, really got exciting. And could you imagine if this game had gone into overtime just like the Saskatchewan Ottawa game did? Oh boy! I mean, the Command Center just might have been getting their money's worth again in this match. I mean, they made their presence felt again. And listen, I'm sure a lot of folks are very upset with some of the calls that were made, but I'm sorry, but a lot of those were really indisputable. I mean, and I'm not just saying that because Montreal won. It had nothing to do with that. I mean, if you really truly look at the plays, you really look at what they were able to see in that, you'd clearly see that yes, the calls they made were ultimately the right ones.
I'm still questioning. I know we talked about it pre-show. Still questioning the call on that Cole Speaker fumble, and then it wasn't Cole Speaker who fumbled it. Cole Speaker trying to get batting the ball back out of bounds. I could have sworn that it was it would have been Alouettes ball. It wasn't a turnover. Considering the gorgeous shots that they had tonight with the sky cam, and you know what I'm talking about. If anybody who watched the game too, just those overhead shots during the short yardage plays were just spectacular. I think if it had been over there, I think we would have noticed that it actually was Cole Speaker that knocked it out. But either way, it was just, I think comments were made a few times on social also that, this was a Trevor Harris game. This was, and I sent it to you, many a time. It was dink and dunk Trevor Harris, which I'm sure as fans know, even when he was with the Montreal Alouettes, it was frustrating as hell because the Alouettes could not get, because of just said game plan, the Alouettes could not get to Trevor at all, and he did a very good job considering it's his first game back too since June.
Yeah, I mean that would listen. I'll give Trevor Harris a lot of credit, and I'm sure a lot of people are surprised that I'm doing that. But I mean, he worked his plan to perfection. I mean, that is who Trevor Harris is. He's a dink and dunker. He, he'll get you to the red zone. Uh, but when it's all said and done, sometimes the best you can hope for afterwards is a field goal. And imagine if those field goal attempts were actually touchdowns. You'd be talking about a completely different story, a completely different quarterbacking situation. You'd be talking about a completely different narrative altogether. But that's who Trevor Harris is. He's great at padding his stats. He's very good when it comes to getting you into the red zone, but he doesn't always close the door. He doesn't always pull the trigger and finish the job. He did tonight, though. He did throw for one touchdown, so I'll props for that. But I mean, by and large, I mean, yeah, this Elvis defense was having trouble with him because he just finds ways to frustrate you. That's exactly what Trevor Harris does as a quarterback. And funny enough, we didn't see a whole lot of that Trevor Harris when he was in an Alouettes uniform until the end, like towards the end of his career here in Montreal. Then we got to see that Trevor Harris for the Alouettes, and that's the Trevor Harris we were hoping for, but ultimately did not get. And that's why, okay, decides to go to Saskatchewan. Great. I mean, if he didn't do that, I mean, would we still be seeing that Trevor Harris under Jason Moss? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. So, I mean, Trevor leaving for Saskatchewan ultimately was the best thing that could have ever happened to the Montreal Alouettes, and for so many reasons. But I
Yeah.
digress. This isn't about trying to slag Trevor Harris or
No,
diminish
no,
him like that.
it's just very reminiscent of the Eastern semifinal where Trevor, I think, started off 23 of 23 versus the Alouettes, and again, it was just it's how he plays. It's a perfect. It gets, I said, it gets fans frustrated, but he knows exactly how to play. And by the way, shout out by the to Brian Mathern, a fan of ours from Louisiana, who's chiming in tonight. So.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's you missed quite a hell of a game, but you tuned in at the right time, Brian. That's for sure, my friend.
You'll never go wrong if you just catch the last 3 minutes of any CFL game, and this one was no exception. I mean, not to say that the other 57 minutes were terrible. I mean, there was some good moments throughout, but I mean, that last 3 minutes, as I said, like that entire game-winning drive for the Alouettes was cinema. There's just simply no other way to put it.
Yeah, you know how long that last 5 minutes took? I looked at my watch. I was thinking, oh yeah, we'll have more than enough time to do the pre-show for this thing tonight, and nope. It finished
Nope.
just finished at that 5 minutes. I think it was like at 11:30 Eastern. And I was like, obviously we saw when the game ended. So yeah. So and see here, Josh. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Dink and dunk. But yeah, let's talk about this because obviously this was a game of a lot of many different things, and we talked about how Davis was able to overcome his first half, and it just shows how much he has grown as a quarterback over the last couple of weeks, and just shows why he deserved the chance to get the start.
Not to mention too, like he went through it this week in a lot of ways. Like he had to leave the team for a little bit to go, on a personal matter, which we assume is to go see his father, who, as we've mentioned, is battling stage 4 lung cancer. We were praying that everything was going to be okay, but I mean, like for him to be able to come into this game, and nobody would have faulted him if he had a lousy game. If his mind was preoccupied with his father, that would have been totally understandable. But it's almost like this galvanized him. It almost like, yeah, it took a little while for him to get going and find his rhythm, but once he did, I mean, he was looking like the Davis Alexander that we've seen twice against Hamilton, and yes, against in that second half at home versus Saskatchewan. I mean, he got it together. He was not perfect by any stretch, but I mean, he did the things that he needed to do, and my God, I mean, just the cojones to be able to put it together. Like he put this team on his back, just like we expect Cody Fajardo to do when he's under center.
Mm-hmm.
Davis put this team on his back, and he willed this team to victory. I mean, there's simply put, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Davis Alexander is the truth.
Yeah, and if you saw the coverage of Davis earlier this week, obviously when he got back, he missed with day of practice. He even said himself that first day of practice he was rusty. He was rusty and he was off, and a lot of people in local media actually did point that out. But he short week or not, because the Alouettes did fly in. They had only 2 days of practice this week. Flew into Saskatchewan into Regina on Thursday. But still, the game plan was sound. Again, it's funny, Cliff. You look at the two games on the road for Davis Alexander. Okay,
Mhm.
it's almost identical when it comes to not only stats but also the scoring. It's almost identical. Both games so far that the Davis has been under center on the road. The Owls have scored no points in the first quarter, none.
Mm.
So it's again, but. Obviously, there's a lot more to Davis. Obviously, that huge run at the end of the game.
Oh,
Talking about Brian's talking about here about there's too many official reviews at the end there. There have to be. And that's one thing that's actually different between the CFL and the NFL is how they look at these official reviews. And especially after the command center gets basically their hands slapped this past week on
oh yeah.
on how they are going to review and how they're going to look at different things. They're not going to butt in. There are certain things in the CFL that have to be automatically reviewed. Touchdowns and turnovers. Automatically.
Yeah.
Automatically.
Which again, the best example of that was the Charleston Rambo, what turned out to be an incomplete pass by Davis.
Obvious.
I mean,
I was like, what are you doing?
yeah, I couldn't believe that. That was clear as day. But okay, once again, the command center is there to correct the mistake. The ruling on the field was a turnover by Saskatchewan, so it has to be reviewed. It has to, especially too when it's under 3 minutes. You almost have to believe any sort of opportunity like that has to be reviewed automatically, no matter what, even if it was clear as day. Whereas in this case, I mean, I guess it wasn't clear enough for the referees to see on the field. And okay, as we said, referees, human error, it happens. You can't fault them for that. That's why you go to the command center. And that, again, I'm sure once they were able to blow it up with their multiple views and all that jazz, as it stands, incomplete pass. I mean, you could see the ball moving just underneath Rambo's body. I mean, when you look at it like that, yeah, on sober second thought, you're like, oh, of course, that was an incomplete pass. Were you crazy? But you know, this is why you do that. This is why you have the review. This is why you take a look at these things, and ultimately, that's what it was. I'm not saying that. Now, again, this isn't a case of the referees giving the game to the Alouettes. At the end of the day,
No.
Davis Alexander still had to.
And
He still had
Brett
to make that.
Lowther really gave. I mean, I think they said at the end of the game was a 19-point swing, easily a 19-point swing.
Oh, simply put, but I mean, now imagine if Maltos had made that field goal or a point after attempt.
Yeah.
Again, totally different story, but I mean, listen, it's not how it starts, it's how it finishes. But I mean, that game was just bonkers,
Yeah,
simply bonkers.
it
There's
is.
no other way to describe it.
Yeah, and obviously we'll go over this in a lot more detail on the show on Wednesday. But I mean, it's you look at the game itself now, Cliff. I mean, there are still a few frustrating things, and one of those frustrating things, besides because I know we're getting away from how the Owls scored and stuff like that, but we're going to be getting to that. But one of the things that is really frustrating that we thought was finally fixed as of last week was the running game, and obviously this week, obviously coming in this week, yeah, that wasn't the case. I mean, Alexander led the team with 33 yards. His longest was that 15-yard touchdown there at the end of the game. before, besides that, Walter Fletcher had 14 yards and Dominic Davis had 4. The problem is about that too, Cliff, is that the Alouettes had a grand total, not including short yardage plays, 3 rushes in the second half. 3.
Yeah.
And one of them was Davis's touchdown at the end. 3. That's bad. And considering they couldn't get any pressure on, really no pressure in the first 3.5 quarters on Trevor Harris. It's something that hopefully will be corrected. Obviously, I know they got a big a game next week versus Edmonton, but it's not, again, it's a thing that is concerning. This was not perfect. This was not a perfect game in any way, shape, or form. As I'm sure we'll see in some of the post-game interviews that we'll see on TSN, et cetera, like that. They just got to get better. They got to get better. And there were a few things too, not very many penalties, but Saskatchewan shot themselves in the foot with a couple of 15-yard penalties right there I think it was in the second half. Again, and then the Alouettes do the exact same thing, especially on that last drive. Unfortunately, sometimes the defensive guys have bad games. This was Nafis Lyons' bad game, and this is probably a second this year that he's had a bad game.
Well, and also too, let's not forget he was torched by Mitch Picton on that touchdown that initially gave Saskatchewan the lead in the second half, and yeah, he just completely busted coverage. Just caught him flat-footed. Essentially, Picton did, and okay, it happens, but couple that with the horse collar tackle, and yeah, this is definitely not going on Nafis's highlight reel. I mean, the guy is outstanding football player. There's no question about that. But tonight was not his night at all.
Now, comment here from Bart. Hey, thanks for joining us, by the way. First time watching us live.
Thanks for joining us.
I don't know what you were what you're commenting on with that, because what we saw clear as day, there was green. There was green in between his cleat when it went down in bounds on that play.
It was close as hell. Again, we don't have all the angle. Like the angle we saw on TSN is that's just one of the many angles that the command center has. I'm sure they have an overhead shot too. I'm sure they've got other ones as well. I mean, they have to essentially to be able to make a call like that and make it conclusive. And yeah, I mean, there was definitely some green in between Davis's cleat and the boundary marker.
It's not, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if there's another angle, but then again, as you said, Cliff, there has to be indisputable evidence that he stepped out of bounds.
Correct.
So,
simply put, that's again, and I get it's tough. I don't know if Bart's a Rider fan or not, and maybe I'm hoping that's not sour grapes on his part. It's just listen. Could have just easily happened the other way, and you live and you die by it. You have to hope that the command center knows what they're doing. I mean, you have to count on the fact that they've got multiple angles to be able to see this stuff, and they're using every possible way to see what's going on. And they had the sky
cam. They had the sky cam this week too, but it may have been out of position.
Potentially, but who wasn't out of position today?
Who's that, Cliff?
James freaking Letcher.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that was one of Lothar's misses that cost dearly. I mean, I'm not as dearly as what ultimately was the final play of this game, but oh man, a missed field goal. James Letcher takes it 128 yards to the house. His first house call of 2024. Once again, could not have come at a better time.
Yep. So Bart knows you. You know Bart.
Okay. The Bart. Oh, geez, Bart, I'm so sorry, buddy. It's been a while, man. Where have you been? You've been hiding on us, dude.
But Letcher, wasn't that was his first return, punt return for a touchdown since the Edmonton one, regular season punt return since the Edmonton return, right? Last year?
No. Remember, he had a kick return in the Eastern Final.
No, that's why I said regular season.
Okay. No, against Hamilton. The last regular season game against Hamilton.
That's true too. You are correct, sir. You are correct. Yeah. Was that punt return? Or was it a touchdown? Kickoff return?
Oh, that was a punt return. Because Hamilton also had a punt return touchdown in that game as well.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can give some love, Josh, to the command center. I don't know about that. What's funny, by the
Listen,
way, is that they didn't show a single picture of the back of their heads of the command center tonight. Not a single one.
well, because I know I've been calling it out. I've been saying like, what, what's the point of that? What are you hoping to accomplish by showing that? That oh yeah, we actually are working and not watching the TV or anything like that.
Yeah.
Listen, it's all well and good to show that image, as I've said, but
Let's hear them.
it,
Let's hear them.
let's hit, yes, at least if you show them like kind of pointing to the screens and things like that, and just okay, sell the idea that you're truly reviewing it, other than just okay, I do see some images of the game itself, so I have to believe they are watching the game.
Yeah, I
But
want audio. I want audio. And it's something, we'll see what happens in the off season, but they're gonna go with this directive first. But
I,
going back
I,
to Letcher, going back to Letcher, man, a guy that we know that he really has had an off year this year when it comes to returning. He's had some great returns, right?
mhm,
Some of the times, as he saw tonight, he goes like a bowling ball into these huge dudes, and they just they shoot him into the atmosphere because this is a small dude. But still,
yeah,
this one was shades of that Edmonton return. Just the way that he was able to go down the sideline, be able to find finally find that groove.
yeah.
And the Alouettes, also speaking of, the Owls kept Mario Alford in check. That was another
Oh,
huge thing.
and how, and that again, that was one of the many narratives. I mean, never mind Trevor Harris, facing his former team for the first time since signing with Saskatchewan, but Mario Alford too. I think this is also his, well, in Saskatchewan, I should say, facing the first time facing the Alouettes in Saskatchewan. So I mean,
Yeah,
last time these two teams met in Saskatchewan, Alfred was on the Alouettes and was
that's
traded
true.
after that game.
Yeah, and by the way,
to-
speaking of, wasn't this also the first time the Owls have met Trevor Harris since he was an Edmonton Eskimo on the opposite side in that playoff game?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, actually, no, he okay. Yes, it was.
yeah, okay.
I was gonna say he was still with Edmonton in 2022,
Yeah, there's no
but I think he was injured.
yeah, there's no 2020, et cetera. So Alfred 128 yards. I think that was the official count was 128 yards. That itself, considering that the Owls were very anemic in the third quarter, Cliff, that was kind of the spark. That was kind of the spark because, again, at that time, the Alouettes defense really, it was just, again, Trevor Harrison, the dink and dunk. The Alouettes couldn't get any pressure on him. The Owls needed a spark, and that spark was Letcher.
Yeah, do we call that the TSN turning point? Because I mean that, as you said, that was a spark for sure. But I mean, when you think about the back and forth in that fourth quarter between both of these teams, I mean, what more could you, as a CFL fan, what more could you ask for than both of these teams literally giving it their all in this game? I mean, someone had to win, someone had to lose ultimately, because I think they were going to do everything possible to avoid a tie, even if this game did go over to overtime.
Yeah.
But oh my goodness, I mean, this was wow. This was a this is a game you're not going to forget for a while still, because this was just incredible. I mean, just with all the narratives behind this guy, and a lot of people were really clamoring for Cody Fajardo to be in this game. I wonder if those same people are going to say that now. Like Davis, he just does it. I mean, 3-0 as a starter, which is absolutely tremendous. Uh, my God, all he does is win. And this is what we've been talking about for years now with when it comes to Davis Alexander. He has the talent. He can be a starter in this league. He does have the tools. He has it all, quite frankly. He just needed the opportunity. And look what he's done with this opportunity. Now, here's a big question. How do you not keep playing him? I mean, no matter how Fajardo's doing, I mean, obviously they felt confident enough to dress him in this game if he had to go in, and at one point it looked like he was going to, because Davis was actually down on the ground, and I think he just had the wind knocked out of him, and I think
Yeah.
that's all it was. But still, like you saw Cody back there, just starting to look. It looked like he was warming up. Like maybe they might let him get into the game, but ultimately this was Davis's game from start to finish, and a well-deserved win. And now, next Sunday versus Edmonton. I mean, as much as we want Cody Fajardo back behind center, the way he's going right now, how do you how do you leave Davis Alexander on the sidelines? How do you not let him keep this going? Like you got to go with a hot hand, right? How do you not let Davis Alexander start again against Edmonton?
I guess it depends on what it's going to be, what it's going to be for Cody. I mean, I was very surprised he was the number 2 this week, but I'm not, considering that Dominic Davis was our third stringer. So, and by the way, Davis Alexander, I'm going through it real quickly here. Rarefied air, one of the very few Alouettes in history to get their first 3 get wins in their first 3 starts. I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on that, and I'll let you guys know on social media. But it's something that even he ties Vernon Adams, because VA did the exact same thing. I think it was at the end of the 2020.
2016.
Thank you, sir. Yep, 2016 season. So rarefied.
The last 3 games he started in 1.
Yeah, rarefied air. Rarefied air.
And let's not forget, Davis last year took number 3 as a tribute to Vernon Adams, who was very helpful to him in his development as an Alouettes rookie. So
Yep,
that's pretty good company. And I'm sure if you tell Davis that, he's going to be humbled and very excited to be in that category with one Vernon Adams Jr.
Yep. So we go from VA to DA.
Big play DA. You know what?
Big
that
play
works.
DA. Yeah. Denny's chiming in. Very good point. It's a very good point about him. I think he just needs to get a little bit better within the first half when it comes to being on the road and stuff like that. But he had one again. That was first. Was that his first game-winning drive in his career?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if you count, unless you count coming back against Saskatchewan the first time.
Fair. Yeah, I don't know what the CFL considers as their game-winning drive. I guess you got to be down in the 4th. I guess. At 3 minutes. Who knows? We got to find that out. So, and yes, Denny, as it's showing in our scroll line below. Yep, 8 straight wins. It's now a team record on the road. So, let's talk about.
Impressive.
Oh, I know. Let's talk about some of the wide receivers here, Cliff, and talk about some of the other stuff. And I said, again, we'll be going over this more in detail on the podcast on Wednesday. And speaking of the podcast, by the way, if you hadn't catch this past week's, we had an extended interview with the one and the only Rod Peterson. Make sure you guys give it a listen, either on YouTube or by regular audio. If you know who Rod Peterson is, him and his show, the Rod Peterson Show, always a great guy to talk to, and that's so knowledgeable about the CFL. So we hope you guys do listen in.
Always a pleasure to talk to Rod, and definitely this particular interview too was just absolutely phenomenal. We don't just talk about this. We didn't just talk about this game. We talked about all sorts of things. CFL talked about what's going on with him and the Rod Peterson Show. It was, I would go so far as to say this was a must listen to, just because Rod brings it each and every time. So definitely by all means go check it out on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts. It's well worth the listen.
Yep. Davis Alexander for the game. Cliff went 22 of 33 for 285 yards and a touchdown. No interceptions. We talked about Davis leading the team in rushing. Leading receiver for the Alouettes, Cliff, was Charles Rambo again. Second week in a row. Very close though. He had 7 receptions, 94 yards. Cole Speaker was second with 92 on 3. But he also had that gorgeous catch of 46 yards that basically, I think, finally gave the Alouettes that early spark. And then, Fletch with the touchdown too off of that one too. So it's, and again, here's the very concerning stat. Again, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, Cliff, not a single quarterback sack at all.
Yeah.
So, but
that says a lot.
Yeah. Anything you wanted to center on? Come Rambo or anybody else, or Cole Speaker again? Cole Speaker, loudspeaker.
Yes, indeed. I mean, he's been quiet the past couple of weeks, but man, just Johnny on the spot when you needed him tonight. That's just fantastic. I mean, and man, I gotta say that losing Tyson Philpott is not ideal, because you noticed that he was not there tonight. I mean, I think I think Davis would have really benefited from having Tyson Philpott in the lineup tonight. I mean, no disrespect to like Nate Bahar Shedler Fervius, who's ultimately going to replace him as national receiver. But yeah, I mean, I think had Tyson been in this game and playing, I'm sure this would have been a little bit more of a dominant win for the Alouettes. But I mean, he's on the 6-game list now. It's unfortunate, but this team just they keep finding ways to win. And that's what we keep talking about. Winners find a way to win. And if someone goes down, someone else is going to step up. And mark my words, Shedler Fervius, Nate Bahar, they're going to be major contributors to this as well. I mean, just tonight was Cole Speaker. Tonight was Charleston Rambo. Tonight was Walter Fletcher. Like, those were the guys that helped Davis Alexander get this absolutely massive win. And when we talk about defense, wow. I mean, I got to say, I mean, they were good in a lot of respects, but once again, how Trevor Harris was able to just dink and dunk his way past this defense, I have no idea. Another great example too of the defense, AJ Olet barely got anything going, and a lot of it was because he kept running into the brick wall known as Mustafa Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, we've joked about this in the past. Trying to tackle AJ Olet is like trying to tackle a bowling ball. Well, apparently a moose can tackle a bowling ball. Did you know that? Because I just found that out tonight. Today I learned that a moose can tackle a bowling ball.
You were today years old?
I was today years old when I found that a moose can tackle a bowling ball. Wow. And again, this was Olet's first match back. I think he missed the last 3. He didn't play in Montreal either, so this was his first time facing the Alouettes in 2024. And he's burned the Alouettes in the past, especially when he was a member with the Argos. But this was his first time in green and white facing the Alouettes, and he was pretty well kept in check for the most part. I mean, he got a couple of nice runs here and there, but I mean, as soon as he ran up against Mustafa Johnson, he didn't get too far. He didn't get a whole lot on Moose. I can tell you that right now.
77 yards total for Ouellette, I will admit, but I mean, it's the Owls kept him in check. Again, it was really the passing game. I mean, the Riders almost had 2 receivers, both over 100. There, one did crack the 100-yard mark. That was Myers. But again, Harris finished the day. Only 8 incompletions, dude. 355 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, again, it's frustrating, as we talked about at the beginning of the show. Dink and dunk Trevor is frustrating no matter whose team he's on. Even when he's on the Alouettes, it's frustrating for everybody else because that's the game plan for Trevor Harris. That's always they only take he was only taking a risk if he had to, and he did twice tonight. And with that, he got both touchdowns. But other than that, it was like bing, 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 bing. But I mean, it's
boring football, but you're not losing as a result. And that's again that is the Trevor Harris playbook, folks. I mean, it's not pretty football. It's not exciting. It's not holy cow kind of football. But I mean, listen, he does what he needs to do, and more often than not, it does work. It's just a simple matter of if you're going to dink and dunk your way to the red zone, only to walk away with field goals. I mean, you're not going to win. You're not going to win too many football games like that, but at least you're going to score, and Trevor's going to pad his stats and all that wonderful stuff. So I mean, that's just who he is as a quarterback. Hate it or love it. I mean, that's just who he is.
Yeah. A question here from Josh. Snead has been. I think he obviously, as everybody knows, he got. It was an ankle issue or a foot injury. We're assuming until we hear otherwise that the one that Tyson Philpott is probably similar in a way. He's been out of a walking boot since the season ticket holder day. That was at the Big O, and that was
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we have no clue. He's been re-upped on the 6th game. So a few others, we know a few of them are expected to come back. It just depends on when, and maybe it'll be after the next bye week. Who knows? But we'll see. We'll see. Because, I guess it depends on how long everybody is everybody going to be out. So, Blake.
What up, Blake?
Much appreciated, Blake.
We're keeping our clothes on though. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah, no, yeah, nothing on, nothing when it comes to hot tubs. That was that was that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch this week's Turf District podcast. I'll just leave it at that. Any other thing you want to talk about here, Cliff? Because obviously it's again with the Alouettes improving to 9-1. They got the game coming up again next Sunday night. This is the 50th anniversary celebration of the 1974 Grey Cup winning team. Be against the Edmonton Elks next Sunday. It's not a Sunday game. It's a Sunday game. They will be wearing tribute uniforms. Don't know what that means. We'll find out very soon. But any other comments for when it comes to the game tonight, Cliff? Anything that you noticed out of the ordinary? Obviously, Brett Lowther, 3 of 7, dude. Easily with Monsos missing that extra point at the end, near the end of the fourth quarter, that could easily have brought the game into overtime, but the Alouettes were able to I guess ice Lather again. But 3 for 7, and this is a very well-known guy for kicking. He just had an off night. I think he had an off night versus the Alouettes too, the last time that we played him too in Montreal.
Well, don't forget he tried 2 50-plus yard field goals and doinked both of them. So I mean, okay, but that's 50-plus yards. Like maybe he was trying just a little too hard. Whereas tonight his misses were a lot closer than 50-plus yards. So I mean, it's. I said it at first, like he's got the yips. Like I don't know what it is, but then he settled down. He got it figured out. Like okay, this is the Brett Lowther we've come to expect over the years. But I tell you, when push came to shove, I mean he absolutely had to have that field goal, and he hooked it. And like, oh my goodness, like I feel for him. I really do, because we know how passionate they are in Saskatchewan. You know the fans live and die by this team, and I think they had close to 30,000 at the game, which is pretty impressive considering like the first couple of games played, attendance was not that great. But I mean, this is now their 4th non-win in a row. I mean, this is again, as we were talking about with Rod on the podcast. No, Corey Mace is not on the hot seat, and he will not be on the hot seat after this. This is just a series of unfortunate events for Rider Nation. I mean, they had this game in a lot of senses, but at the same time, I mean, they're not 8-1 by accident, and now they're not 9-1 by accident. I mean, this team just finds ways to win, and simply put.
By the way, if we don't have our guest next week, I think you just gave the name of the podcast, a series of events.
Series of unfortunate events.
Yeah, or for us, it'd be fortunate events. So, yeah, 28,000 showed up at the Mosaic tonight. Only 28. Yeah, well, I want to say only 28,000, but that's we're used to being over 30,000 at Mosaic.
That's true, but even then, like just with everything that's been going on with the Riders over the past couple of years, I mean, they're trying to change the culture there. Corey Mace has said this team needs a culture change, and that's exactly what he's trying to instill. And by and large, I think he is doing a good job there. I definitely think the Riders are definitely a team you don't want to face. Essentially, I mean, like I look at this team. Like, could you imagine if this was a Grey Cup game? Which a lot of people were saying that's the only way that you're going to see Trevor Harris versus Cody Fajardo is if these two teams end up in the Grey Cup this year. And you know what? You almost don't want to bet against it. I mean, Nathan Rourke coming back to BC notwithstanding, I mean, this Riders team they are a threat for sure. I mean, especially if Trevor Harris is going to come in and play the game that he does, and they get back they've got a few injuries as well that they've been dealing with. I mean, if those guys can come back healthy as well, I mean, this Riders team definitely has potential to be something scary out in West. So could this have been a potential Grey Cup match? Possibly. We'll see. I mean, and if it is, then yeah, it's one that Montreal is not going to have. You cannot take this Riders team lightly by any stretch, regardless of the fact that they have not won in their last 4 games now. I still say this is a team that is not to be screwed around with.
No. By the way, props to, and this is listed over social media. I think it was by the Alouettes Joey Alfieri. Props to the Riders tonight for basically they had a message for Cody. which is really nice. And supposedly he got a very nice a very nice reception from the crowd. So that was nice that was nice. I don't know if they gave one to Coach Moss.
They should have, but okay, And that's the thing. Like I still go back to Grey Cup last year in Hamilton. So many Rider fans were coming up to me and saying, "We're cheering for the Alouettes because we know that it wasn't Cody's fault. We know it wasn't Jason Moss's fault, and we want that. We're happy that they're going to be successful. We're happy that they found themselves in Montreal. I mean, there's still a lot of love for Cody Fajardo, and maybe even some love for Jason Moss as well in Saskatchewan. They were just dealt a really bad hand on the way out. It just that's football. It happens, but yeah, it is nice that the Alouettes or the Riders, sorry, were able to show some love to Cody because I mean, listen, you talk about putting a team on your back. That's exactly what Cody Fajardo did. Win or lose, you know that he put the Riders on his back and did everything he could to get them to the promised land, and damn near did it too in 2019 and 2021. But you know, sometimes it's like that. And comes to Montreal, finally gets that monkey off his back, finally gets over the hump. Jason Moss as well. They find the winning formula in Montreal. You can't be mad about that. I mean,
No.
so props to the Riders for showing the love, but I can understand how they might have been a little frustrated. I can understand how Rider Nation might be a little bit frustrated tonight by everything that's gone down. But all this to say is the culture change that's happening in Saskatchewan is a good thing, and that is definitely a team that you're going to have to. You're not going to sleep on this Riders team. That is for sure.
No, total yardage, by the way, was 433 for Saskatchewan, 318 for the Alouettes. The Alouettes only excuse me, the Alouettes held the ball almost 10 minutes less than the Saskatchewan Roughriders did. They had it for 25-37. The penalties themselves really didn't make much of a difference, but they did it at one point in this game in the second half, Cliff, where Saskatchewan got back-to-back penalties when it came to after scoring plays by the Owls. Saskatchewan had 7 for 79. Owls had 5 for 65. Obviously, the Alouettes, when it came to turnovers, they lost the turnover battle 2-0. But then again, Saskatchewan is the leading team in the CFL when it comes to plus-minus when it comes to turnovers.
And technically, one of those was a turnover on downs, which, by the way, we'll talk about this more on the next show. But I mean that play call for Dominique Davis was puzzling.
Yeah,
I'll expand upon that myself. But that was just puzzling.
Yeah, I will admit it was. Defensive wise, I've still got to give these guys, even though he had a bad night, he was tied for the league in total tackles. Nafis Lyon had 7. Wes Sutton had 7. Wes had a pretty good game tonight. I said Nafis, he was kind of off tonight, but again, still to me, the issue was no sacks by the defense.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor Harris was given all the time and space in the world to dink and dunk his way down the field, and you got to get a little pressure on him. Something. I mean, it's and you can see like a lot of those guys on that defensive line, like they were able to stop like AJ Ouellette, but I mean, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Isaac Adeyemi Berglund, Mustafa Johnson, those guys were able to really, limit what Ouellette can do. But I mean, ultimately, you should be trying to get to the quarterback as much as you can. And it just felt like this O line for the Riders, they gave Trevor all kinds of time to do his thing, and you let Trevor Harris do that. Like even if all he's doing is dinking and dunking his way downfield, it's gonna catch up to you. It's gonna burn you in the end. So I mean, you gotta find a way to make him miserable. You gotta do something to disrupt him. And the Alouettes tonight,
which they finally did on that last 2 drives. They finally were able to do something. Thoughts real quickly before we go. Thoughts on the O line. They gave it 4 sacks tonight. At times, it just seemed that they were just completely overloaded and weren't able to help Davis in any way.
As good as the Riders O line was, that's how bad the Alouettes O line was tonight. They're not a bad unit overall, but tonight they had their lunch eaten for them, and they could not help their quarterback at all. I mean, poor Davis was struggling in a lot of ways. I mean, that pocket collapsed on him almost immediately, numerous times, and how he was able to even get some of those plays off, I have no idea. But there was also a lot of incompletions, a lot of batted balls. There's like and you can see the frustration kind of mounting with him as well. Like I'm pretty sure he just wanted to take them all and smack him in the face. Like, hey, wake the hell up! I mean, help me out here. Help me help you. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like they always joke about how the quarterback has to take care of the offensive line. Like I think this week everyone on the offensive line needs to be buying Davis Alexander a steak dinner. I mean, something to show like, hey, our bad. That this is on us. We you deserve better, and we have to be better for you. So I really hope this is just a blip on the radar. This is just everybody has an off night, right? So I'm hoping that's all it was for the offensive line tonight for Montreal. But yeah, you got to give your quarterback the time to do things. I mean, if you need an example, take a look at the Saskatchewan Roughriders tonight. They did Imagine if Davis Alexander had that offensive line in front of him.
Oh,
My word, he would have set all kinds of records.
yeah, yeah.
But
But then again, it just showed how mobile Davis is and how good his throwing motion actually is.
I
So,
mean,
I mean, look at a couple. Look, it's like in the Cole Speaker throw. Didn't
mhm.
see anybody. They blew their coverage. He got it directly to the Cole Speaker, and then there's
he's
the run for the winning touchdown.
yeah,
So
like spatial awareness. He sees everything in front of him, and he's constantly looking, constantly checking. Like he goes through his reads. He goes for every. I mean, he sees everything that's out there. I mean, what he's able to see out, like his eyes. He's got wow. He's really got it down. I mean, it's so exciting. Like I come back to the same point. How do you take this guy off the field? How are you going to take this guy off the field to let Cody Fajardo back in? It's going to be tough. I mean, like how can you justify that at this point? Simply, if you're only going simply by you got to play the hot hand, and I think even Cody would have to agree with that as well. And I know that Cody's raring to get back out there, but I mean, when Davis is coming up with these grown man games and just putting in the work and doing everything that he's been doing and winning football games, how do you take Davis Alexander out of this? I mean, even if it is for Cody Fajardo, who won you a Grey Cup last year, it's.
yeah,
I'm not jealous of the coaching staff to have to try and figure this one out because it's not going to be easy. I truly think you got to stick with this. You got to play the hot hand. You got to keep going with Davis. And listen, all it's going to do is just let Cody stay healthy and ready to go because once October, November rolls around, you need to have two absolutely phenomenal quarterbacks. And right now, Montreal does have two absolutely phenomenal quarterbacks.
it's a nice rich to have. It's really a nice thing to have, and we'll have to see because today being Friday, and most likely their last practice will be on next Friday. So they'll have some extra time off. I'm expecting probably they'll have their first practice on Wednesday, but we'll have to see once the team actually releases the actual schedule for it. And obviously, stay tuned, by the way, for some of the Alouette stuff too this week because the alumni coming into town for this game next week is supposed to be out of this world. I mean, wouldn't it be cool? And obviously, we'll talk about it more once we get more information. If we could get that, if we can get Marv Levy up here for this game
Oh
next
my,
week, we'll have to see.
that,
We'll have to see.
that would be massive. And I mean, we got the jackets for him, so why not?
Yes,
We've got
exactly.
those Marv Levy jackets.
Yeah. If you
But
haven't missed any of the Flight Deck Live this week, make sure you can watch it on replay, whether it be here on X, on the Facebook, or on YouTube, or on which it'll be playing almost immediately after over on our Twitch channel. So make sure you do catch it there or catch it whenever you need to. Again, we'll be back with a new episode on Wednesday. So stay tuned to all of our socials for when we do have the episode and when it will be available. But also, don't forget, as Cliffy's pointing out, and see if I can get through this without him laughing, you can catch us over on X, over at Alouettes FL Deck, Facebook over at Alouettes Flight Deck Pod, Instagram and YouTube at Alouettes Flight Deck. So the Alouettes moved to 9-1 with the 27-24 win over the Roughriders at Mosaic, set a new franchise record with their 8th straight road win. So we will speak to you guys on Wednesday. We thank every one of you who showed up. Quite a few you showed up tonight for the post game show. We really appreciate it. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the like button also, and make sure you do hit the bell button for when we do go live in the near future. Again, we appreciate every one of you, because if not, we'd be talking to ourselves. So for everybody here at Flight Deck Live, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We'll talk to you soon.